This album sucks. The 2010s were generally a very rough decade for Green Day. They put out a trilogy of albums that were widely hated by fans and the band themselves. Billie Joe Armstrong went to rehab, they gained and lost a guitarist. But in 2016 they put out Revolution Radio, which was a big success and saw the band get some of the best reviews of their career. For a couple of years they were back on top again, headlining huge festivals all over the world. And it made sense because the late 2010s was a time of political strife where everyone was angry and confused. Following the lengthy tour, the band took a year off and then in late 2018 started writing together. They recorded a new album in mid-2019 and announced a release in September alongside the Hella Mega Tour under the name of Father of All Motherfuckers. Yeah, remember that tour that they announced 2 years ago, sparking this series of reviews that I still haven't finished? It still hasn't happened, but maybe one day it'll happen, I guess. When the album was announced, I, like many people, was fairly excited until I saw the album cover, and then heard the lead single. The album cover is quite possibly the ugliest and laziest album cover I've ever seen, just comprising of the American Idiot album cover with a unicorn plastered on and a new Green Day logo that looks like it was created by someone in MS Paint. There seemed to be widespread confusion following the release of the first single of this album. It was a step back towards the garage rock sound of Dose with a sprinkling of the dance punk elements of Foxborough Hot Tubs and The Network. On paper, not a bad idea at all, but in execution, well. The lead single, opening song and title track of the album is a bright and upbeat song filled with heavily distorted guitars and falsetto vocals. It kinda sucks. The guitar riffs are nothing to write home about, the drums are pretty simple, and Billie Joe's vocals sound awful. The vocal style doesn't fit him at all, and not to mention lyrically this song is just terrible. It's very much Green Day at their most basic, writing a song about not giving a fuck. But the lyrics are the most basic cliched lyrics possible. But it's okay because you can't really understand them anyway. Billie's vocals are so weirdly processed and distorted that apart from the chorus you can't understand anything he's saying at all. And to make matters worse, the song just generally sounds awful. It's so terribly mixed and produced that it sounds like a rough demo that was just heavily compressed. I understand that they were probably going for like a rougher punk edge on this song and album, but it really doesn't fit with the tone that they're going for, and it creates an experience that is jarring and grating to listen to. Track 2 is Fire Ready Aim, somehow one of the better tracks on the album, which I feel says quite a lot about this album because it still isn't good. Similar to much of the album, this is just basically Green Day trying to make a Hives or The Vines record. One of the things that made American Idiot so fresh and exciting upon release was that it didn't sound like anyone else in rock at that time, at least in mainstream rock. In rock music at that time, if people weren't doing really angsty teenage pop punk music or nu metal, they were doing rock music like this, music that sounded ready-made for sports themes or movie trailers. That style of music pretty much died off in the late 2000s because the interest in it completely faded, so hearing Green Day try to replicate it is incredibly confusing. And while the Vines or the Hives had some pretty catchy and memorable songs with really great memorable riffs, this album doesn't have any of that at all. Fire Ready Aim may be slightly memorable if only because of how repetitive it is. The guitar riff blending with the clapping is incredibly cliched, and the melodies, especially in the verse, are like ripped directly from Hate to Say I Told You So. Lyrically, it's whatever. The song is about attacking without thought and features great lines like "Baby got the hyperbole," which is a line they loved so much that they repeated it 4 times for some reason. The song was used as the opening theme for the NHL earlier in 2020, and that completely makes sense because that seems to be the only reason any of the songs on this album exist. It's like they only made it because they wanted to make a sports anthem that they knew would be bought by a company. It makes complete sense why they ended up partnering with the NHL, because it's very clear that they just wanted to make music for them and other sports people. Track 3 is the song Oh Yeah, which is built around the sample of Joan Jett's cover of Do You Wanna Touch Me by Gary Glitter. Although you may be donating his royalties to a couple great charities, still a bit dodgy of you to sample a song from a convicted paedophile. Oh yeah is kind of exactly what you'd expect Green Day to sound like in 2020 if someone told you that they decided to make more mainstream music. It's got elements of pop rock and glam rock in there with his anthemic post-chorus, glitzy synth-heavy chorus and Billy's clearly pitch-corrected vocals, but it still doesn't work. Sonically, the song just sounds awful. It's not a pleasant listening experience. I love abrasive and lo-fi music. Like, I love My Bloody Valentine. I'm a big fan of a lot of the hyperpop bands coming out at the moment, like 100 gecs and Charlie XCX, who make some of the grittiest and noisiest music in the mainstream world at the moment. But this just sounds muddy and lacks energy and excitement. It sounds noisy and distorted just for the sake of it. There doesn't seem to be any purpose to its sound. Not to mention there's just a barrage of annoying sounds all throughout, including weird vocal delay effects, synths and organs. The chorus feels like it's trying to be a huge anthemic thing, but it just feels so bare and underdeveloped. Billie Joe's vocals lack any of the passion that a song like this needs to be exciting. Lyrically, it's not terrible. It criticizes the state of America and its obsession with social media, along with a high amount of gun violence. Lyrically, the song isn't terrible. It's one of the few songs on the album that seem to actually be about something. It criticizes the state of America and its obsession with social media, along with the high amount of gun violence, but it's still not very good. I appreciate the contrasting musical sound with the lyrics. However, the lyrics just feel like they would have worked so much better in a heavier hard rock pop punk song. I mean, it still wouldn't have been very good, but it's the sort of thing that they're good at doing. The last single and fourth track is called Meet Me on the Roof. Yeah, for some reason they just threw all the singles at the beginning of this album. Never a good sign. This song is whatever. It's a bouncy glam song with really obnoxious falsetto backing vocals, but everything else in the song is just pretty average at best. It's not a terrible song, but it isn't good. The second verse is lyrically pretty god-awful. I do like that there's a little doo-wop element throughout, but Billy's vocals really don't fit the song. I also kind of like the very simplistic but tremolo heavy guitar solo. The whole song gives me strong Stray Heart vibes from the Uno Dos Tres trilogy, but that song is definitely far better than this. This isn't a terrible song, but it's still not good. I Was a Teenager is just as cringy as you'd expect from a song of that name. Musically, it reminds me a lot of early Weezer, but if it was blended in with early Green Day songs like Christy Road or No One Knows from Kaplunk. There is definitely a strong punk element in there that I appreciate, but the lyrics are so cringy. They are of course about the band reflecting on their youth and how alienated by society they felt, but the lyrics are so repetitive it's ridiculous. The verses are just a repeating of two lines throughout the whole song. The chorus is just super cringy, with the title being one of the worst song titles I've ever heard. Musically, the song is fine, I guess. There's a somewhat decent melody in there. It's not a terrible song, but it's really not good. Stab You in the Heart is literally the exact same song as Fuck Time from Dose. The main guitar is directly pulled from the song. Instrumentation is literally just the same thing again. I mean, it's a slight step up from that song because at least the lyrics are better, but they're still not good. The song features a guy who finds out his wife has cheated on him, so he decides to kill her. I do think the lyrics could have been a lot better. Maybe if they were funnier or even darker, it would have made the song more enjoyable or interesting. But overall, this is just a repeat of something they've already done before. It's literally just a faster, slightly better version of Fuck Time. Sugar Youth is probably the best song on the album because it actually sounds like Green Day. It's a fast, straight to the point, energetic pop punk song. It reminds me a lot of She's a Rebel, especially due to its short length and the line in the chorus, which seems to be an interpolation of it. It's a song about going to a party alone and being desperate to meet a girl there. And yeah, lyrically it's still pretty shit. It very much feels like a man in his 40s trying to act like a guy in his teens. Some of the lyrics are especially terrible, like the line, like a high school loser that will never ever fuck the prom queen. But there is still a garage rock element to the song, especially in this main riff. It's a shame the whole album wasn't songs like this because I think I like it more, although the lyrics still would have have brought it down a lot. Junkies on a High sounds quite a bit like Boulevard of Broken Dreams with modern pop production and less excitement. It's a slow jam showing Billy singing as a guy reflects on himself while getting high and watching the world crumbling. Musically, it's very, very dull and forgettable. The usage of pitch-shifted vocal stabs and synths are really obnoxious and sound super lazy. Lyrically, the song is awful, the worst lyric being Kool-Aid's my motto, oh yeah. The song never really goes anywhere and it's just the same boring, dull shit for 3 minutes. Take the Money and Cruel starts off with this cool, like, western-inspired sound before going into that just generic Vines, Hives, garage rock sound again. It's basically the exact same song as the first two on the album. There's nothing interesting here at all. I do like the way the verse melodies are like mirrored by the guitar riff, but it's nothing I've never heard before and I've heard it done so much better so many other times. The lyrics are once again terrible, the music isn't good at all. It features the line, "You can take a walk or you can suck my cock." I feel like that kind of says everything. There's nothing new or interesting that this song does, it's just the same shit again. Graffitier starts off as basically a Clash pastiche, sounding almost identical to their cover of We Fought the Law if it was blended in with Death or Glory. The verses feature just Billy's filtered vocals, palm muted guitar, and weird synth sounds. It really feels like the band are trying to go for this huge epic feel, but it doesn't succeed at it at all. It's not the worst song on the album, in fact I'm inclined to say it's one of the album's highlights, not that that really says much, but it just sounds like a collection of sounds done better by other bands. The chorus of "Are we the last forgotten, are we the long lost love" is the most cliched call to arms pop punk anthemic statement, rivaling Youngblood in terms of cringe. I appreciate the political stance in these lyrics, but I find the execution just super lackluster. The first time I heard the album I was really confused when this song finished and the album just ended, because not only is this a very weird closing song, but I also forgot how short the album was. The album is only 26 minutes long, by far their shortest album, and in a lot of ways that's a blessing, because if I had to listen to an hour of this, I don't think I would be alive right now. This album is more than just a huge misstep, it's a confusing mess. Instead of trying to step forward with a new sound, the band step backwards and go back to a style that seemed to be the complete antithesis of what their older music represented. There is no drive or emotion here. Even before the pandemic, 2019 and 2020 was such a political shit show that we really needed something bold, aggressive, and full of anger. Green Day didn't do that at all. Instead of fighting against the man, they spent 25 minutes trying to make music that appealed to the man. Instead of standing there with their own unique voice, they stole the voices of bands that people stopped caring about 15 years ago. There are elements in the album I do enjoy, and I don't have an issue with the band wanting to make a happier dance punk record, but this isn't that at all. This is a messy, terribly written and awfully produced record. There have been many rumors that this album is just a huge joke. It was their final album in their record contract, and they also had the opportunity for the Hella Mega Tour, so a lot of people think that they just rushed this out without any care to kill two birds with one stone. But the more I listen to it, the more I don't think that's the case at all, and that's really sad to see. It's sad to see that after 30 years, this is the best they can do. Obviously, the Hella Mega Tour was pushed back to this year, but it's unlikely it's going to happen now. For the band, it means that they played a couple of shows around the release of the album, but apart from that, basically haven't been able to do anything. Supposedly, they're writing new music and plan to record after the pandemic passes, and they did actually release a new single in the last week, but it was basically just like an outtake from this album, but with slightly better production. But apart from that, the band members have been keeping busy. In May of 2020, they put out a cover of Blondie's Dreaming, and Billy then went out to put a series of cover songs, which he then put on a 14-track album in November. And in December of last year, their side project The Network returned. Money Money 2020 Part 2 We Told You So is basically more of the same for The Network. Funny, fast and fun new wave stuff. It's definitely very, very long, like way too long. It's 54 minutes long and there's 25 songs, and yeah, it could have easily been half of that length, but if you liked the first Network album, then you'll most likely like this one as well. In terms of Green Day's future, I kind of hope they don't have one. The band have been struggling for a while, and with this new album it sounds like they kind of are just giving up now. A lot of the elements on this album Billy had already played around with through the Longshot, his most recent side project. Of course it was a lot better there, but still, maybe instead of ruining their legacy they should all do their separate things instead, or maybe just carry on touring and not put out new music. Like, at this point they don't have to prove that they can make music to anyone. Like, they're still talented performers and people will go see them like play huge festivals and stuff because so many people love their older music. They don't need to put out new stuff. It kind of sounds like they don't really want to make music as Green Day anymore. Like, listening to the Longshot and the new Network album, it sounds like incredibly passionate, but listening to Father of All Motherfuckers, there is no passion there at all. Maybe if they took a break for a bit and had a huge comeback and made like a career best record like X did with their recent album Alphabet Land, they could do something, but I guess only time will tell.